So, Casey or Elena, go ahead. Give us a quick synopsis.
Okay. We've met with both of your groups, and so we won't go into all the details, but basically, we started this project and started talking about this in early 2020, and we have been part of an advisory committee that has met regularly over the course of the last 11 months. And so as we've met, we've tried to formulate a plan with all of the community members that are part of our advisory committee, including Matt, he's on our team as well. And we've put together a plan for the community to respond to. And so we are in the process right now of continuing to meet with people and get feedback. We've had tons of good feedback about this project, feedback that we could put into place to make changes so that it would reach to more of our community members. And we've also taken some feedback that maybe might help us as we move forward, so as we consider further options. So at this point, right now, we are continuing, like I said, we're continuing to get feedback, and we are starting to get letters of support from community stakeholders, and so that's been going really well. And at this point, we're going to be looking see how this meeting goes, and then in early December, going before the city council to ask for them to put this to a vote for the citizens. So that's sort of where we are and where we've been. You guys are probably aware of all the other details as well, because we've met with all of you, but that's sort of the synopsis of where we are.
Dave, you want to give a quick description of what you came up with?
So, as Casey mentioned, we started meeting earlier this year. Generated very quickly kind of a concept and idea of how the existing Bauer gym building could be converted into a community building. I don't know if those two on the video have been really key in this, and so I'm really surprised I'm the one sitting here. They're doing an amazing job of kind of getting information out to the public. And so we developed some generic ideas for the project. I think what we have here, I think it's important to realize and understand that this is preliminary. This is intended to establish the scope of work that will be the plan to dollars. So as the project moves forward, we're anticipating dollars. Again, some of this looks pretty final and pretty hard on. The reality of it is plan. As you're all aware, the building is issuing register of historic places. And one of the reasons that should be is that we really there's a way to realize some funding from the state in order to help offset some project costs for that. That doesn't exist on buildings that are not on the register. It comes with some other requirements that you have to kind of drink the Kool-Aid on, if you will. But it's certainly good dollars, and they're not grant dollars. They're pretty much guaranteed as long as you're working through the state. So
Okay, I'm sure we'll get into the
details. Okay,
yeah.
that's fine.
Ben, can you kind of give us an overview of what your work with the committee was?
I'm sorry?
I've been part of the city's financial advisor. What we were able to do is put together some assumptions based on operations and let's say debt. If it was going to go to debt, what level would we have to sustain over a period of time, whether it's 10 or 20 years? At the time we did this, the interest rates were relatively high compared to now. And we see a considerable drop in those interest rates. They're the lowest I've seen in probably 25 years. Jay's nodding his head. He's seen it too. And they've stayed there. Just checking what is going on in the market right now. There's some of the, like I said, there's some of the lowest rates. If you compare the potential for a bond issue for this project on a low side or a high side, it still would save a tremendous amount of money moving forward now versus, let's say, in 6 months, we really don't know what interest rates are going to be. All that to say, if we do move forward, it will require a new revenue source based on what the city budget looks like. And the school district
operate, it's hard to have a city council be fully informed through a process like this. Kind of get pieces of it through the committee reports, et cetera. I mean, I think one of the questions I've had from the outset is, you know, it seems like this advisory committee very quickly focused on, you know, in my mind, the task was, if I can be corrected, was, you know, find a suitable use for the Bauer building. We want to save it. Okay, that was the primary objective. And it seems like very early, the primary use or the best use that the advisory committee came up with was a community center. I think from all the work that the committee's done, the plans we've seen, it looks, you know, very impressive about what they've come up with. My concern from the beginning has been, you know, that solves the task for the committee, right? That's a viable use for that, saves the building. But what I was never clear on is, where does the community center, where was that in the city's plan? Is that the top priority? You know, you've taken now something that the city's gonna have to fund and operate going forward, city entity. Where did that sit? Where does that fit? You know, if that's the top priority for the city, and the advisory committee wants to save that building, very, very, I think, great match, right? You saw both. You click off the top priority and you save the building. I just don't know where it sits on, or was on the previous council's priority list, and certainly don't know where it sits on this council's priority list. So in my mind, it was that discussion of, is this the top, I'll call it the quality of life amenity that we want to go focus on? And the way I think we should look at it is, we've got infrastructure needs, we have quality of life amenity needs and wants, and we've got two separate things, two separate expenditure potentials, and we've got to meld those two together, right? It's the same bucket of money. This all comes out of the citizens' pocket, one way or the other, for both infrastructure. So, long answer to your question, but I'm just still not sure where this fits on the community center priority for the city, and if the city had a community center at the top, does this meet that requirement of what they envision it to be? So I've been for, can we slow down, have that discussion as a council? Does this fit our priority for quality of life amenities? And is this what we would put in there if we didn't have this building, right? So what compromises do we want to make, should we make, just so it solves the, you know, the saving the building piece as well? So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't have a preconceived notion of where we would end up if we went through this whole discussion and planning process as a council of, yeah, this is it, boom, and match it. We just haven't had that discussion in my mind yet.
I guess to answer that, Scott, I saw this when we were offered this building as a huge opportunity. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's an opportunity, and I know like you it's a building that qualifies for SHPO funding, so that's huge. We're looking at over $50,000 in funding just for that alone. And it's, despite the fact that it needs a lot of remodeling on the inside, structurally, it's a very small building, and it would accommodate a community center perfectly.
No, I don't disagree with any of that. It's just that, you know, I think we all, at least in my mind, if we do this, as you ask the community to spend money and they ultimately make the decision, it's not a bottomless pit, right? So if we start asking for new sales taxes, I think if you look historically, it's going to be a significant period of time before we can actually go back and ask for more, future council or anybody else. So this, you have to look at what this gets you, but you also have to think about what it's going to not allow you to do in 5 to 10 years, because you spent this money. You can't spend it again. It's targeted. And what I'm trying to get at is, if the community center is really a top priority, have we talked to all the stakeholders and figured out what that, you know, what that community center would look like, and then taking it back and say, can we fit it in this building, or is this building only cover part of it? So that was the discussion I was hoping would happen. And there's a lot of quality of life stakeholders that should be involved. I mean, all of them should be involved in saying, you know, that's a great use for that building. It just doesn't really solve this need we think we see, even if it's 5 years or 10 years from now, because this will impact the ability to do that. So that was really what I was hoping to have, that level of discussion. And quite frankly, I don't know that we wouldn't end up right back where we're at. I haven't been involved, and it may just come right back to that, and we're there. But what I feel hasn't happened is that discussion. Where I don't feel comfortable that this is the top priority for the council on a quality of life amenity that we want to go ask the to fund in a variety of different ways. So, I mean, everything you said is true, but it didn't address the part about, is this the top priority for the council?
I guess I got just a couple of responses to that. Is I feel like we are involving the stakeholders by having community outreach and then putting it to a vote to our citizens. I mean, I guess I see them as the end stakeholder in all of this. If this isn't the right time or if this isn't the right project, they're going to tell us, and I'm going to stand behind whatever the vote says, whether it's good or bad. Doesn't matter to me. I just like the idea of citizens having that opportunity to have their vote on this project. And then when you talk about, the infrastructure stuff to the quality of life stuff, I mean, kind of two different things, because infrastructure is typically funded through our property taxes, or as Ben likes to call them, our ad valorem taxes, and comes into our, comes into our budget, and then we budget it out that way. I agree with you. We do have infrastructure needs and that we need to address and create a long-term plan for. But a project like this, I feel like, is best suited for the citizens to tell us, hey, are you wanting to fund this or not? Throughout this committee, the committee's work, I've heard them ask Jay several different times, hey, how much would this building cost to build brand new? Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, it'd be at least 2 times the amount that that his projections show for this remodel and for this same building. Am I incorrect on that?
That's fair. There's a lot of question marks in there, but yeah. If you looked at going off and building something new, you bring into question land costs, maybe a non-issue, but utility infrastructure, other than that one Parkway just recently here in town. Whether that's pulled to the site or these various things. But as you look at a building like this, at least you have kind of before you an existing structure that you can look at and evaluate. You've got the walls, you've got the roof, you've got the foundations, so if you just start taking those kind of pieces out of the new cost of the building, you can very quickly see that in place you already have half of the value of the structure there. So I think that's fair.
So, and then, I mean, just going through all those steps, and, I set up this committee so that it was all citizen committee, no ties to any specific organization or anything besides obviously Matt being involved in the committee. But other than that, I wanted it to be a really community-driven thing. And if the council, if they bring it forward and have the council put it on a ballot for a vote, then it's still community-driven even after that. Because us as being part of the city can't go out and push one way or the other. So I feel like they've really done their due diligence and addressed a lot of those things. I know when they talked to Ben about funding mechanisms, there was talk at the beginning about doing a quarter cent, and they said, no, let's do a half cent so we have enough to make sure whoever occupies the building and manages it has enough funding there to support the excess funding or excess employees they may need. And then after 20 years, back off and have a sunset on 50% of the sales tax. So I really feel like this committee did a good job in, really taking into various different accounts and being good stewards with the potential money from the citizens, because ultimately it's their money and their say and their vote. All of us will get one vote on that. That's just.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts, and originally, the advisory group took this looks like a done deal to me. And I wish the advisory group, I know they've done a ton of work, but I wish they would have come to the council in the very beginning with ideas that we could have talked about. We had that first work session, and we had Jay explain the blueprint on it, and I'm not sure that's the best use of the building. And I would have liked to have had more input on what it could be.
So what do you think the best use of the building would be?
Well, I don't think it's up to me. I think it was up to a discussion of the whole council with the advisory group and probably with the RAC if they're going to be involved in it. And the other point is, I'm not sure this is the right time to put a vote to the citizens. Number one, I don't think the citizens have been involved in this at all. I don't think the surveys were a true representation of the whole community. And number two is that I don't think that this is the right time to ask people for money. And I don't see that there should be any rush into doing this building at this particular time.
I guess I'll go back to, if that's the case, if our community feels like this isn't the right time, then they'll vote and tell us that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being told no.
Okay, I am too. I think that the citizens should be the ones that vote on it. But my point is, I don't think the community has really been involved in learning about what the building's going to be or how it's going to be financed or how much money it's going to take. And I think the response from the surveys was a small percentage of what the whole community is. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, there hasn't been any focus groups. There hasn't been any wide publicity of what the building is. So I don't think that they can make a choice on, an informed choice on what they're voting on.
But if the council chooses to put it on the ballot, there's still 3 months before the vote even happens. So there's more, this isn't the end of the informational piece for the community. The group has been going out to different organizations and giving a presentation, email presentations, meeting with business owners, all that. So I guess what I'm saying is there's more community outreach once they know that it's going to a vote as well to get the word out there. But I'm going to let Corey or Susan kind of address that since you guys are the lead council, the committee on that board.
Yeah, community outreach has been ongoing. It's, and Casey and Arlene can speak more on who all they have, different groups they've gone out to, visited with. But in addition, there's information going out in utility bill. That'll reach every household in Baldwin City. We've got more town hall meetings planned. I mean, every meeting we're talking about what do we do next to reach more community members. So it's an ongoing effort. And now that we have a newspaper back, there's going to be some newspaper, of course, social media. Lynn's posted it several times.
One other comment to that in support of what Julie's saying, obviously the citizens get to vote. Ideally, so it's a yes or no, right? It's I'll pay for this or it's nothing, right? I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, you'd have a list of things. Do you want this, or this? The more options you could give the community, I think the better decisions you're gonna get. And so, to Julie's point, I don't know that anyone's ever even talked about an alternative use for that building. It's always been just this or nothing. And that's a hard decision to make. It's like, well, I don't have a community center. This is better than nothing. But what if they could see, well, what if here's a plan for community center or quality of life amenities that include that building and maybe some more? And maybe it's a 10-year plan. This is phase one. You know what? That actually solves more of what I think the needs are of the city. I like that better, but it's really just a black or white, this is it or nothing, and you're right, they get to decide. But, you know, I also think that, to Julie's point, it's been very difficult, as we all know, trying to have community meetings in the pandemic. It just is. You know, the technology, some people are not comfortable with it. They don't participate, whereas it show up to a meeting and listen at least. So I think we have to recognize that that's just a fact. We've done everything we can. We've done a great job of trying to make it available. It's just not the same. You don't get the feedback that you normally get. I don't think any of us know where this pandemic's going, how long it's going to last, what the real economic impact's going to be. I mean, we're sitting today in the same spot we were in April when the thing was spiking. We had no idea where it's going. So we do have line of sight maybe to a vaccine, have no idea the timing. You know, the successfulness of that, you know, so, you know, pushing a vote in this time, I just think as someone that's asked to make that decision for citizens, I just don't think it's the right time. So I'm also struggling with, you know, all that being said, what's the magic about April as opposed to November? To give us more time, 6 more months, see where we're at economically with this pandemic, maybe explore some more options, get more feedback. I just don't understand, you know, no one's come to me or at least articulated what the driving factor is in having this as an April special election versus a November election. And I guess I'm interested in that. Why does it have to be April? Why can't we wait till November? What's the positive and negatives of doing that? I guess I'll ask the committee members, what's your thoughts on that?
We talked extensively about it. You know, the biggest concern, I think, was what Matt articulated about the bond interest rates. That this project could end up blowing up in 6 months versus if we ended up doing it now. And that's sort of my understanding as far as the urgency piece.
So,
Sooner than later.
yeah, I mean, that's obviously a risk. So just historically, you know, where have we been in these bond rates over the past 5? I mean, it's been historically low. Do we see anything that's going to drive it up? I mean,
Well, and it's impossible to answer your question, obviously, but just putting some hypotheticals together. When we started this process, when I started this, I jumped into the process and started running some performers on the debt. We get interest rates around 2.25%, which from a public point of view, that's extraordinarily low. They can't find a house loan that low. But for a bond market, it's been at that level for a long time. Then starting in March, it started dropping and it stayed there. Right now, it's around 1 3/4. The difference between those, let's say just on a $2 million building, is $150,000. So your risk of moving forward in November versus now is really $150,000. And it's not uncommon for interest rates to go from 1 3/4 back up to 2 1/4 in a matter of weeks. So I don't know whether that's going to happen in June, January. Typically, these rates right now through an election cycle have already gone. Typically, they haven't moved. So they're inching down again.
Real quick, I'm gonna ask anybody that's essentially not me or Scott to speak up. As far as your level, so that the microphone can pick you up.
I think there's another piece in what Ben was saying, that is a bit of a crystal ball, but as we look back at the way, when we hit the pandemic, the construction industry really didn't stop. It kept going. They were deemed essential, and they have kept ticking along. Back in 2000, when was the housing bust? 7, 8? There was a point there where construction, I mean, when that happened, construction stopped. And what you saw was the cost of construction actually didn't increase because the people who were going to build were kind of taking it in the teeth. The cost of materials kept climbing as they did, but the cost of construction kind of leveled out because people were starving. There was nothing out there. That's not what we've got here. So, yeah, the crystal ball, the magic crystal ball, whether bond rates are going to go up or down, the reality of construction is it has been marching at 3+% a year because it's not stopped. And so as you push the project further on down the line, it's just like buying a car. A car never gets cheaper, right? There's an increase every year, right? I think you will see that the further down the line you push the process. So couple the bond with, the realities of marching cost and inflation of construction, and I think there's another piece to that facet that he's not speaking to necessarily directly. So.
That's exactly. We've got a client that moved forward with a vote to the public on a community center that had a library in it, but nonetheless, they moved forward with a sales tax 3 years after they started the discussion. 90 million went to 13. It wasn't just the interest rates, it ended up being the steel, the labor, everything just exploded. I think still were able to get it passed, but it's on. It's just a reality.
One other point I'd like to make is, what if the citizens do not vote for this and it doesn't pass? What are we gonna do with the building then?
I think that's when you start up another group and start going down the same process over again, having the discussions.
Which should have happened to begin with, so that we would,
But
we could
Julie-
have come up with maybe something that isn't as expensive, but would still serve the community.
Something that's not as expensive.
Yes.
I mean, Jay, we're,
Well, currently, of all the information that I'm aware of, this is the least expensive option being studied.
What other options?
I think they're good to. Right. I think we're looking at, if we look at this building and purely look at this building and talk about different uses inside this building, no others have really been studied. And what you'll find is, one of the reasons I think that I'm not sure how we got to a community building, but that's where we are, is the space was built and intended for an original purpose, which obviously is an easy use of how it would move forward and function for the community. As you go in, office buildings typically will cost more to build than gymnasium spaces, because you have unless you're building, this is a local space and we've got all kinds of things going on, but the more you chop up spaces, you're building wall space, you're building plugs inside the wall, switches, you're breaking your finishes and re-carving things in. So if you have one larger space, it actually costs less to build or to remodel. Certainly in this case, if you have a large volume space and it's repurposed for that, your costs to remodel that are much, much lower than going in and trying to chop it up for some other additional use. Couple that with the fact that the building is on the Register of Historic Places, we would have to be extremely careful about how we went into a space like that and started dividing it up if that was the idea for some other different use. I'm just sure that SHPO will have some very strong feelings about how we do that. But, so as we look at this, obviously repurposing that large space for a large space function makes sense from a cost standpoint. And so I'm guessing that's how that kind of played into where we were going with the overall use of the facility.
Yeah, but if you used it like a visitor center, for example, you wouldn't have to have all of the expense of putting in the retractable basketball goals, and you wouldn't need an elevator, you wouldn't need a mezzanine, you wouldn't need a lot of the things that are in there, and still would be able to use the building for lots of different things. You could still use it for the seniors to play cards or whatever. You could use it for tourism. You could use it for a number of different things that wouldn't be as expensive, and you still wouldn't have to chop it up like what you were saying as far as office space and that kind of thing. It's just an idea.
I did look at the one idea of part of the effort in kind of building into the old fly space, kind of behind the proscenium, was just to increase square footage on the site for the use, and how we could get as much square footage as possible. Right? The building is what it is. I mean, our footprint is what it is. expanding it is not really an option. And so figuring out how to get as much square footage in there for whatever use was a good one. I looked at, what the cost of building that second floor and then, the associated elevator that would go with it. And I'm guessing that was around $300,000. If you look at it in total, I'd have to get back through some of those numbers. The remainder of that remodel on the main floor, I think would still be there. Does that make sense? If you were remodeling this space. So if you're saving around $300 by not building the mezzanine space, you're losing around, I think it was 2,000 square feet, but the project would go from roughly a 1.7 down to a 1.4. Does that make sense? If you still renovated this building for some other function on the main floor.
I think whatever you would have to make the building to be would have to be an open space. I don't think you can go put up partitions over a Chabot, gym floor. I think that's the state gym floor, right?
We believe we can remove the floor and get something that would be a little more multi-purpose. If
But
that
it would
was the
still have to be
goal,
an open floor.
yes, they would like to see the space. They would like to see the space used as its original function. You can go in and divide them up, but you have to play games with how you touch the ceiling and the walls. It may not be ideal for sound noise and some other things. City Hall is a great example. If you go into the first level of City Hall, you'll see that they have walls that go up, and then there's just a single piece of plexiglass that goes over to the old tin ceiling and kind of tries to carve its way around. And they make you do things like that.
Right. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's no shock that the building got donated. Everybody instantly kind of thought community center space or some kind of a communal space. An alternative use for it besides that would be the largest space for that function, I think, in all of Kansas, because I think the requirement to keep it open. And so that's why I understand going down alternate, and we should talk about alternate uses. But I keep going back to the fact that whatever you put in there besides an open community space is going to be so incredibly large. You talk about heating and cooling it, that's where my head keeps going.
Yeah, and I think there were a few reasons why we landed on community center. One of them was that, it's a need in the community. We need a community center. And another one was the fact that we can't reconfigure the building itself. It is what it is. And it lends itself to a community center, so.
Building as originally constructed certainly lends itself to large motors.
Does this answer your question? Melissa, that's how this all started, was with your question. How do we feel as a body? I'm not sure that we know yet. I think that this is a good plan. I think there's been a lot of work done. Scott and I have talked about in our committee how we would like a chance to revisit our strategic plan. We met together, and one of those top goals was, it just said complete the community center. I can't remember what it said.
I think it was make a decision on the Bauer building.
And we all go put a dot, and we need that chance, the five of us, to get back together. It doesn't mean that because we're questioning this project that we don't like it or that we want to stand in the way of people voting and deciding. It means that we have a whole city to prioritize, and that can fit into that. Matt's come before us and given us your strategic plan. Wendy comes before us with the library strategic plan. I would like the chance for us to come to you and stand at your podium and hand you ours, and so you can see it, so the citizens can see it too. That takes a lot of work, but what it takes first is for us five and the mayor to get back together, which we have a plan, I think, to do, right, Casey? Yes. In December. So what I struggle with is if the committee comes and asks for a sales tax vote in early December, I need that time for us to prioritize a lot of things, not just this building, not just a vote. I agree with Scott. There is a danger in having that take up a space that we might need for something in the future, but we can come to that conclusion, I think, as a body. We don't get the chance to talk to each other. So when I see Susan out, I can't really just say, there's been times where I wanted to tell her, I really like what, I see here, like, you have this picture of tables and chairs, and I think that's great. I got to watch myself, because we're supposed to talk as a body. And we haven't really had that chance yet to focus on this and other priorities. I'd like that chance to revisit our strategic plan. But I do like this project. I do respect the work that's been done. I don't want to stand in the way of citizens deciding what they want for this community. But we have to know who we are as a body and be able to tell you specifically who we are.
I appreciate that, Brian, because that sort of ties in to some of the things I have on my notepad. And that is that as a citizen, I would like to know what our city priorities are. If you're going to ask me for a half-cent sales tax, I want it to be the best usage of the money that's possible. Not determined by, or because Brian walked in there this morning and he remembered being playing basketball. I coached along the sideline, so people walking back and forth. I understand that. But I want these, as much security as I can in knowing that if you're going to ask me for this money, this is the best use that this governing body can guarantee me at this point in time. I don't think that's unreasonable. And I understand your need to revisit. We know what the community told us about what our priority is, and it is a community center. We know that. It's been historically that way, and it's proven again this way. But we also haven't sat down to figure out what that could be and should be. The other thing that I like about what Scott was talking about, slowing this down, turning down the heat a little bit, if I can take Biden's comments, is basically, have we pursued alternative funding for the uses of our building? Because it does have the caveat that nothing else we have in the city, well, I should maybe not say that because we have the train people, but since it is a historical building, is it possible that there are other revenues of funds that can be used to create whatever is going to be created for the use of that building? That's not going to be asking for sales tax money. Are there foundations? Are there grants? Is there a capital campaign possibility? If so many people have spent,
some of them surely have some pockets now too, they have some money. I think there are streams that we need to pursue to find there is an answer or there isn't an answer. Because it appears to me I'd rather have my half-cent sales tax go to whatever the city decides is the highest priority. And right now, I don't think the Bauer building is the highest priority, but I don't know. I'm also I coached for 38 years. You lead, but basically you have a team atmosphere. And I like to bring in the players on the quality of life, not just rep, but whoever else is out there. And you do have a struggle. The advisory group had a struggle because of the pandemic. You can't gather people together. We could, now we can't. But, and I have a little bit of expertise in this field, having been in the effort of the community center that we did have the city several years ago, so we could take part of the taxation. When we flew the city, we could take that to the vote. We were just this far away from the school district allowing us to let vote because we would need a mill levy increase. But we do know what a viable community center could look like. But like Scott mentioned and several of you mentioned, we've asked Jay, is there anything that we could have in this community, in the Bauer building, that would not be needed if we then asked for a community center? And there really was not much about something, right, Jay, if I recall that. That was pretty much not much we could do. Not that. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so I just think that we need to step back, re-engage, but you guys over there, you're gonna have to let us know what your priority is. And Mayor, I respect, your opinion on, you don't care whether the vote is yes or no and whenever it's going. I want it to be positive because I'm not sure how soon you can come back having had a failure. And then now we can think of a better thing, and now we're gonna try to sell you this. I'm sort of one of those, you do the best job the first time, you sell me on it, I'll vote for it. I don't want to have to come back and say, why didn't you do this the first time? Why did you not do your homework better? Now, this is just an opinion of somebody who's a citizen for a few years, and I will admit I've been on the rec commission for longer than probably I should have, but I want us to be proud of what we come up with, and I don't see the dire need for occupancy of this building. We're basically the one thing that we have that we need to have put on it to be able to maintain it where it is now in field. So, I don't know, you may have some questions of me, but the speed of this train, without knowing how it fits in with the rest of the cars that are on the same train. And I just think we're too little to think that we can occupy, that we can function independently of one another. It's just not going to happen. We would have almost nothing if it wasn't for our association with the school district. And then you guys as well. I mean, that's the size we are. And we need to do that. And ducks can get in a row, but Brian, you're right. It's going to take some good conversation among the members because you do have limits out of the community on what you can talk about. I don't know if there's anything else that I would say, but I have said this much, and I do appreciate the opportunity for us to get together. And I would like to have this continue to be a discussion, not a debate. Because discussion is where you get things out in the open, to give some ideas to other people, her way of thinking, his way of thinking. Yeah, that makes sense. I never really thought of that. I'd like to be able to use that terminology, that wordology on the other way when I'm speaking to something. But a discussion, not a debate.
I agree. From the very beginning and from our conversations and some conversations we've had at the committee level, I think I'd always been interested in the idea of the Bauer building and the community center being part of a bigger picture and what that might look like. And I know that you guys, and you had mentioned, I hadn't heard that piece yet, that check off any of the boxes that could then be remaining over for a different future building. I kind of like to talk more about that in this discussion if we can. So we talked about the Bauer building. Okay, the rec, their strategic plan has all these check boxes that they need. And the Bauer building, as we understood it, was going to take a section of those. And then the remaining unchecked boxes could possibly go toward funding something else down the road. Is that no longer really viable, is what I'm understanding?
That's correct.
Why? I mean, we need to
can't
do that.
have offices down there when we would have a different, community center. I guess some of the restrictions that we understand, it's just basically, there's nothing of any regulation size with the basketball court nor the volleyball court. There could be regulation size for a couple of pickleball courts. The real, some of the obstacles we have there are you can't be playing basketball and volleyball at the same time because it is the same blueprint. It's just a smaller need for the court. For volleyball, it's not got the appropriate height. Not that there can't be any competitions. Pretty much. Basketball court is not regulation size. Volleyball court is not regulation size. You could not be doing both at the same time. We only have 2 pickleball courts. There would be no basketball. There would be no volleyball going on at that time if you were using both pickleball courts. If you were to pull down the batting cage, you could have pickleball at the other end, or you could be shooting baskets at the volleyball. So pretty much you are, whenever you have the one thing that's going on, is the one thing that's going to be going on.
I'm gonna join that kind of too. First of all, we all agree that the advisory committee has done an excellent job. And Jerry, you made it look like a beautiful plan. We think it looks great for what it is. But in my opinion, it checks off one box. And that one box is a building for a community center. But it doesn't allow us to grow in two specific areas. It doesn't allow us to grow in programming. There's no additional programming that we can provide having this space. And then it also doesn't allow us to grow as a staff. So if the recreation staff is in that building, there's no more office spaces than we already have. So if our programming grows, which is always the goal, we have nowhere else to put our staff as it grows along with it. And it is, in my opinion, it's a single-use building, like Jenny was saying. You can only do one thing at a time, one program at a time, one major program at a time. You've got the youth room, which I love. I have a son who will be in middle school in a couple of years, and he's going to need somewhere to go. So I would love to have that opportunity to have him go to that building. So there are some areas that are in there that we don't particularly have, but it's not enough boxes that allow us to grow, and that's a really.
I guess I got a couple of comments to that. One, I think the committee kind of thought, hey, this isn't just a sports. We're not just looking at sports. We're looking at being able to bring everybody inside to do different things, whether it's community dinners, bakers express interest to come over and use it for their alumni events, different things like that. That's why Jay showed the table set up also. So I don't think in our mind it was ever thought of as a recreation facility. It was a community center that you could also have recreation in. My other thought on that is, to put in multiple gyms like you've described. I mean, we're going to need sales tax and property tax like the prior plan had called for to fund that, because the city couldn't fund that on its own. Our taxing authority is maxed out at half cent, so you're going to have to also get mill property tax from the school district. And I think I came to those meetings, and I guess our thought on this project, the committee's thought was, hey, we can fund it through sales tax. It covers all the operating expense, everything, and there's no entry fees. So every child from the lowest socioeconomic status to the highest can use this facility and be able to be in there. Every family. It doesn't carve that out without raising the cost of living for individuals. We obviously, this council doesn't have a say in that property tax because that's the school district. Have you guys talked to the school district about how they feel about increasing their
Not
property tax?
recently, because this part of our strategic plan hasn't been discussed yet. So we haven't talked to them since the last go.
Okay.
Traditionally, and you're right, the space does have its limitations, although the high school played there and Baker actually played there, back in the day before we quantified everything so specifically about what was official and what wasn't. The truth is, when you have limited square footage, this is one of the things I love about old buildings. They really do. They give you, if any of you do algebra, they give you X and Y and say, go find Z. We know we've got a finite piece to work with here. So what you do then is you go in and you figure out how the space can be easily converted so that the uses can become something else. It can become this or become that in about 5 minutes. And then you're right, then it's a scheduling piece. If you can't build larger, you figure out how to do more in the space you have. This is a great example. We're sitting on a stage having a public meeting right now. And so That's really how all of this kind of, how do we integrate as much as possible to give as many potential activities for the community as we can. That's simply how it evolved.
And I don't think we disagree. I just disagree on the timeline, the funding, the input, some of those challenges. I think it's important that you basically really listen across the stage, really listen, so that you feel like we are hearing what we, like Melissa's first question is like, how well informed do you think you are as city council members? And that is a very good question. Because you are a leader. You are leaders in how this goes. The timeline. How soon does it, no matter what it is, how soon does it have to be done? Or how soon does it not have to be done? Can we do some talking? Can we do some organization? Can we put together our, how skilled we are sitting here on figuring out how to get things done? How to work together?
I guess the process hasn't played itself all the way out. So, and unfortunately, in our group, we do have limitations on how we can communicate and how we can talk. So to insinuate that the city council doesn't have all the information, you're right, they don't, because we haven't gotten to that step yet. We haven't gotten to that work session to where they can hear from the committee, again, after getting all the public feedback. With Sullivan Square, we did a very similar approach to that. And sometimes on the council, again, we just have to follow the laws, and the laws are what they are. I'm not using it as an excuse. All city council members can go to all public meetings and get all the information they want. So I guess I don't want for everybody watching to insinuate that this council is not informed. It's because the process isn't completed. We still have more community engagement to go. That includes the council, but the committee wants the information from the community, so that way when they're asked from the council, they can give them that information.
To add on what Casey said, the plans that we had are, like Jake said, they're preliminary. So that's part of the community outreach, part of this is asking, this is what you like. What you're looking at, is this ideal to you? It's getting that input and bringing it back to the advisory committee and putting it in front of the city council.
So will it be a final plan? Everybody keeps using preliminary and stuff before. Will it be a final plan that's presented in front of the council?
No, it can't be a final plan until the funding is there. We can't have a final plan. So that's why I said even after the council, if the council votes to put it on a ballot, there's 3 more months there still that, again, communication's still going on, talking to the community, engaging in them about the intended purposes of that. But to come up with a final plan before you have the funding in place, can't really do it. Just like when we planned out the Sullivan Square, that changed a lot during that process. And until we went to the council with the final project saying, hey, vote on this as our final plan, that's kind of when it was.
Traditionally in these efforts, it would have been great if I would have sketched it like this, but I'm just faster on the computer, so it looks really hard and done, right? It's unfortunate that day and age, that's the way it's kind of gone, but architects really don't do almost any drawing anymore. It almost always goes in that way, but as part of a process of developing a project, you do have to give something for people to look at in order to support it. If you give them an idea or reject it, if you give them an idea and just give them a list of bullet points, you may as well not go for a vote. again, I do think the plans are preliminary. What we were trying to do, what this does is gave us enough information to really look at an old building, evaluate it structurally, evaluate some form of adaptive reuse to be able to put a good number to those dollars. Because as this group, greater minds than myself, would consider even putting it on a ballot, we need to be sure we're covering costs so that when we get to that point, it's approved, we're in a good place and not upside down. Does that make sense?
I guess I'll just summarize what I'm struggling with, and I think we've all touched on it. Ryan put it very well as far as from my perspective on the council priority list. But to me, in my apologies to the committee leads and advisory committee, but and this may have happened, but the task was to find a suitable use for the Bauer building. Okay, that was the task. Is that correct? Is that the initial task for the advisory committee?
The initial task was to find a suitable use and come to the council with a recommended funding.
Okay, so I think they've done an excellent job. In my opinion, though, as soon as they came back with, we think it needs to be a community center, that immediately should have brought a different committee together. And is this the right building for a community center? Does this land in the council's priority list? Where is it? What's the school district think? What do all the stakeholders think? So to me, at that moment, it's like, thank you, that's a great suggestion. Now we need to broaden the discussion. And I know you've done some of that. Have we done enough of it? Now it becomes, is this a community center that the council and the community want? Separate issue. And they may have to go back to the advisory committee and say, what's the next best thing this building could be used for? And I think they've come up with something tremendous. I just do. So that's what I'm struggling with, is this thing morphed at some point into a different discussion. And I'm not sure we pivoted with all the stakeholders when that happened. Open for questions. So the task was find a suitable use. We think it'd be a great community center. Well, then it now becomes, well, do we need a community center? Is that what the council wants? Where does that fit? It's a whole different discussion then. Not that we disagree that that couldn't be what that building's used for, but now it becomes, is that what it should be used for? Is that the best use for it? Does it fit in what the council wants to do? It's a completely separate discussion.
Yeah, and I agree that discussion needs to take place.
Okay.
Also remind you that advisory committees, we may need to group and organize meetings, but it's comprised of citizens and their input, and then going out to other citizens, gathering their input. So it's us gathering all the information from the community that has brought us into what it is.
And they did go speak to.
No, I appreciate all that effort. I think the question could be asked in several different ways, is do you think this would be a good use of that building? Yes. Is this a community center you think the community needs? Completely different question. To the same person that might get a different answer. That's the nuance I'm trying to get at, is two different questions. Maybe ask them both of everybody. That's where I'm struggling, is that it's separate questions that kind of got put together on purpose, but I'm not sure we've looked at the way. And to your point, we still need to and we will, but that's where I'm struggling. Because I think it is potentially a good use of that building. I think you've done a great job of making it work, do the financials on it. I just don't know the second question. Is it the community center that's top priority for the council? And is it something that the entire community wants? Is that their number one priority? As opposed to not doing X, Y, and Z. That's it.
I know we used to discuss it in CDC in addition to what you were doing with the advisory group. Is that something that you guys still discuss in CDC as well? Or have you just been keeping those discussions to that advisory group? You both are. So.
Yeah, because
That was
we're
really
all both groups together, so.
right.
Yeah.
Nothing on the CDC agenda is on.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion items?
Anybody on Zoom have any comments? I mean, we got to take this opportunity to hear all the ideas. We don't get these enough. Don't be shy.
I think somebody's trying to talk.
They may have been the whole time. That would be frustrating.
Can you hear us now?
Somebody say something on Zoom?
Are you guys able to talk? You're off mute.
Looking at their keyboard to do it.
I wonder if the JBL's synced up.
Let's try that. Try again. I had to switch computers, and that speaker hasn't integrated with this. Try again.
Can you hear me?
There.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to clear up a few things that I keep hearing, and I want to just be as transparent as possible. When we started this committee, we did talk about multiple uses, and ideas did come up. What kind of guided us the whole time is that this project, this building, is a gift to the community. So it was about what serves the entire community, not visitors that come occasionally, but the people that live and work here every day. So that is what guided us to a community center. The other things that guided us is we didn't want our property taxes going up. And it's not just our opinions, it's what our friends, our other community members have said. And so we were very cognizant of what we were doing and the plans that we kind of brought up for people to react to. We kept that in mind. The other thing that we have been adamant from the get-go is that we want the final decision by the community. That's why community members are on it. We're not the same 5 people that always make decisions. We're a group of individuals coming from all different demographics. And we bring with us the opinions of our friends who live and work and play in this community as well. So I think it's very important to remember that we're not just thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about what this gift could be to our community. The other thing is, I think we need to remember that the community is bigger than just one of us, it's all of us. And I think that's an important thing. And yes, the images that Jay so eloquently drew, they do look finished, but they were not intended to be the final thing. We needed something to go for people to respond to. If you say it but you don't show it, it's very hard for them to vision it themselves. It's also very hard for us to know what kind of expense we're even looking at to see what is and isn't possible.
I'd like to go ahead and add on to what Arlena was saying. Another thing, I know that many of you may not be aware, but we have spent an immeasurable amount of time talking to people and meeting with groups and continue to do so outside of our regular responsibilities. And so I don't want there to be a perception that we haven't been talking to people. We have talked to a lot of people, and there have been a lot of people that have been very excited about this. At no point has anybody, except for maybe some groups in town that could partner with maybe the building serving other purposes, but the citizens that we've talked to, nobody has brought up the idea of it being something else. And so we leave the door very wide open when we present. We share what the community outreach has been. We share what the advisory council has come up with, and we ask for feedback. And in multiple instances, we've brought back feedback that either we needed to make changes based on the feedback we had, or we needed to talk about something that we hadn't thought of before. So we've been very transparent through this process, and we've met with lots of people. So I want that to be understood and known that, again, what Arlena said is true. It's not just the two of us. We've been talking to a lot of people, not just our friends, but people that we've never met before, which has been kind of fun and exciting to get to share such an exciting project. And when people find out it's not a property tax increase, it's sort of like a big relief comes off their shoulders. Also, the other part that I feel like we haven't really talked about much today is just that the historic significance of this building means a lot to this community. The fact that it's part of the historic registry, the fact that this building was finished through the WPA project by the citizens of this town. And so there's a lot of excitement about that. And I've heard a lot of people discuss today that maybe this isn't the right time. But what I hear from the community is this gives us hope, something to look forward to after the pandemic is over. So it's just a different perspective. I think it's important that we all stay very objective about this project, and I get passionate about it too, because I think it's really awesome. I think it's a great thing for our community. But I also want to make sure that all the perspectives are being shared. And so just wanted to throw that out there as some of the experiences we've had as we've gone out into the community to discuss this project with others.
As you guys have gone out and talked to
This is Sean. Wendy, I'm sorry. Somebody else trying to talk. It's hard to hear here. So.
Hey, go ahead, Sean.
First and foremost, I do want to say thank you to the council and the committee members and other people that are here. We're all giving up a Saturday morning, and that is appreciated, and that doesn't go lightly. I know we all have busy schedules. With that in mind, I do have concerns about the timing of this in the pandemic. I want something to look forward to as well. But I have concerns about the timing of asking for this during a pandemic when it's unprecedented. No one knows what's going to happen. I understand that right now money is cheap, but we could chase that kind of tiger all day long. It just goes back to me value. I see what the work the committee has done, and I think they've done a great job. I see the uses that they put into this building, and I see where those could benefit some of the citizens of Baldwin City. I just have concerns about the timing. Most of all, I would like to see us pursue additional funding that's besides the sales tax that is available only to a project of this type. Because this building is historic, because this building is on a preservation list, there are additional funds federally that are earmarked for these specific types of projects. The downside of that is it's going to make us be more patient, and it's going to make us finish this vision that the committee has put together over a little more time. But it does free up some of that half-cent sales tax possibly for the future that would be for projects that aren't a viable applicant for those types of funding. And I don't think we've gone down that road enough. And I do think it is part of a bigger community vision that needs to be looked at by the council. While I totally appreciate the committee and all the work they've done and wanting to take it to the citizenry, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, I think we're moving very quickly towards that. And from my perspective, I did elect 5 council members to help make these decisions. And it wasn't left in a subcommittee to make all those decisions and move it forward. So I just want to make sure that we follow the process. It's not the vision. It's not the work that the committee has done. I just want to make sure that we follow the process that we've always kind of had set forward. And, and that's it. And if we are going to move that direction, the reason why I always kept pushing for this meeting was if we are going to move towards that direction, then there are discussions that need to happen. And basically they come down to logistics and legal and expectations between the rec and the council. And that's not necessarily that committee. If the rec commission is going to be the managing body of that building, and I've heard it, I went to one committee meeting and actually it was said, well, that's not for sure yet. So, I don't know, but if we are going to go down that road, then we're going to have some more discussions, and those discussions really go between the two entities. If it's landlord, you can look at it almost like landlord-tenant, and we need to have those discussions. And I think we need to have some of those discussions before it's put before the citizenry, only so that we all know what we're getting into when we vote. That's all I've got. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. The first one is, as you guys have been going out and talking to different members of the community, what are other things that you're finding, with the plan not being final? What is it missing? What are other things that are being looked at to be incorporated into the plan? I'm gonna let Arlene
and Casey.
speak to that.
Arlene and Casey, did you hear that? No.
My other question was probably for them as well.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us now?
We can hear you. We can hear Casey and Scott really well, but we can't hear the others very well.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better? Okay. My question is, as you go out to the different community members and talk to them, what are you finding? What's missing from the plan that you guys are looking at to include into the plan? We keep hearing, it's not final. What is it missing? What's the community saying that it still needs?
Casey, do you want to go first?
You can go first. It's fine.
Well, from my perspective, when I've spoke to people, we have had some feedback, but for the most part, I think the biggest one I've heard was from the golf group, that batting cage, if we made it a little tighter weave, we could do golf cage as well. But overall, I think they're very excited. They're excited about the meeting rooms. I said that they're very excited about the game room where we can all be together. I think that we've tried to keep it so general that a lot of things can happen. And I don't necessarily hear a lot about what's missing. I keep hearing about all the cool things that can happen in this space. Casey?
Yeah, I would agree. There's also been a lot of really smart questions asked about the way that we're going to fund this project. And so that's led us to be even more clear about how we can be good stewards of the money, because one of the big things that Arlena and I brought to the table when we started discussing this was we want to be transparent and good stewards of the funding. And so we originally were very much pushing for the $0.25, and then when we realized that wouldn't be enough to take care of the staffing needs and the extra operational costs that were brought to the table by the rec, that we felt like we wanted to make sure that funding was there. Just recently, the discussion was, what could we do to make sure that after the bond is paid off, how can we be sure that money is used wisely? And so we decided as a committee that it would be smart to sunset 50% of those funds, so that that would free up the tax that the citizens would be responsible for. Most of the feedback about the facility has been positive. I was trying to think while you were asking that question, what have we heard that was negative? In fact, most people are excited that it wouldn't be a facility that would be used for tournaments and competition. It would be more for play. I haven't heard a lot of the feedback about it being too small. I honestly just haven't heard anybody say that. Most of it's just enhancing what's already been created. One of the ideas that someone came up with is putting a curtain halfway through the building, so that, on one side we could have pickleball, and the other side they could be shooting hoops, or one side could have batting practice or a golf driving range, and the other side could be doing pickleball. So I do hear that I think the rec would like it to be a multi-use. I see it as a multi-use. I think that's just a matter of programming and making sure that it's utilized as best it can be, and I think it will be, because people seem very excited about it. So I think every time we meet with a group, we come back with the feedback and we talk about it as a team. We meet once a week, so I haven't really heard things that lend itself to what is it missing. A lot of people are very excited about the meeting rooms. Also, a lot of people are very excited about the capacity that it can hold, because we currently don't have a place in the town that isn't affiliated with the school district that can hold up to 130 people for an event. So that's been, a lot of people have been very excited about that. So I haven't heard any of the feedback of what it's missing. It's more like, what are the possibilities, glass half full.
I have one more question. Are you preparing anything that is validating all your findings? I know that you have a summary of the survey that was put out into the community, but are you guys putting something together so we can see what you're hearing from all the different community groups that you're talking to?
I guess I'm not really sure what you're asking. Are we putting together like a summary of what we're saying?
Are you putting together any data so we can see the validation of the conversations that you're having?
It's when you say data, we're talking about qualitative data, which is really feedback. I mean, there's not going to be numbers attached to it. I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what exactly you're looking for. I mean, we can certainly put together summaries of what the discussion have been. We do take notes at our meetings and talk about what the feedback was.
And that's more what I'm looking for. We keep hearing, we're hearing positive feedback, but we want to see the questions that you're asking and what the positive feedback is.
Okay.
Hi, I just want to make a suggestion. What about surveying the stakeholders and other entities in town and maybe getting some qualitative and quantitative feedback that you could share as well? It'd be a way for other organizations in town to give some, and if you wanted to make it anonymous or you wanted to put a name to it, either way, that might be a way to get additional feedback.
I think one of the questions I have, going along with what was just asked, is I would like to know how many people you talk to and what percentage of the community that is.
They can't, you'll have to probably come closer to the mic from where you're at.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I was curious on how many, you keep saying you're talking to tons of people and everything, but what I'd like to know is the numbers. How many people have you talked to? What type of people? Are they seniors? Are they kids? Are they, whatever the people are? And what percentage of the community are you talking to? And I mean, you talk to groups and stuff, but what about the people that are just out in the community, just regular citizens? That would be useful, I think, to me.
Yeah, we can certainly put that together. That would be pretty easy. I mean, we've kept a good list of all the people, and we have met with multiple groups and individuals. So, and that's continuing to go. That's ongoing. So as long as you understand, if we put that list together, it's going to be added to pretty frequently. I mean, I have a list of people I'm talking to this weekend in addition to the people I talked to already this week. So, that's not a big deal. We can put that together.
Just don't be surprised when that sample size is going to look small, because on these type of surveys, they always do. You're not going to get 50% of a population to return a survey. I remember Baker University did one several years ago about what their students wanted on campus, and they got 19%, and they were ecstatic. They thought that was like, that's a huge number. So if it looks like a small sample size, that's why they call it sample. I know everybody probably knows that. I just don't want you to be shocked when it's small.
I wanted to add to, whenever we were working on the auditorium, which is now Sullivan Square, we found that we had to do different ways of reaching out. So potentially, if you wanted to reach seniors, a paper survey walked over to Vintage Park might be better than a Facebook survey. We kind of learned those kinds of things, and that maybe have already been done. I don't know, but I just want to throw that out there that maybe that extra reach with different ways, because not everyone is online, especially sometimes, folks who didn't grow up with the internet. So the other thing I want to say is a genuine thank you to Arlena and Casey. They are rock star citizens, and I've worked with them in other ways, and no feedback that I'm giving or I know that anyone else is giving anyway diminishes the respect and the admiration we have for the care that you've put into this. I think all of these questions are just, they kind of are outside of the process that you've done. So questions like the priorities and the fit of this for the city as a whole and the strategic planning piece of it just has no reflection on the wonderful work that you've done. It's a separate process. So I just wanted to say that, and I wanted to thank Susan Pitts as well, and Corey or whoever else has been on the committee. Just thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I did want to add just one other thing. When we do put this list together, we will also have to include, the outreach that we're doing that can't be measured. So, for example, in this month's utility bill, there's going to be information included in that that's going to reach everybody who pays a utility bill. Also, we have a website that we give out every time we go and talk to people, because we understand that some people may not feel comfortable telling us the negative feedback because they see how excited we are about it. So we do have a place for them to go online to give feedback or to call. That we always tell them you can call City Hall as well. They're collecting data as well. So although there's no possible way for us to meet with every single person in the community, there are ways that we're trying to reach them that give them an opportunity to have a voice. So, and I was a psych undergrad, so I understand surveys, I do understand data collection, and I do understand that most people that speak up are typically going to be people that are really either very passionate or they are really angry. So a lot of the feedback we get may not be that middle of the road person, and so that's where we really hope to get a citizen's vote, because that's really them voting with their feet. So, and I do understand that there are some other things that need to happen before that happens, but that's sort of been our thought process all along.
Any other questions or comments or discussion items?
I have one for Corey. Sure. And I don't want to pick on you back in your candidate days, but I remember you standing at the podium and questioning the previous council on just, should we save the building? I don't remember exactly what you said, but now that you're on council and you've been brought in midway through this process, what do you notice? What have your eyes been open to? Has your opinions or questions changed at all?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I said. I said that I felt, I questioned having a space and being forced into it, making a decision being pushed into it. Yeah, let's see, when did I join the committee here? Early October. I'll say this. My concern is that great feedback from the rec and everybody. Those concerns are legitimate. My concern is that an alternative community center, so the rec, for the first project, you guys went out and determined that a community center was a big need for the rec and a big want for the community. So that's still here. We still have that need and that want. It did not pass for whatever reason. It didn't pass. And so here we are, we have this opportunity. And if we don't go forward with this opportunity for an alternate opportunity, which I don't know that we really nailed down what that would look like, and it failed again, the Bauer building is looking pretty darn good as far as an option for a community center for the desire that still exists. That's kind of where I'm at. Those concerns are still there. You guys accepted the donation on the do see the restrictions and the limitations. I also see the potential of being 5 years down the road looking back at the Bauer building. And I don't think it's an empty concern because it did already not happen one time. And I'm afraid that if it didn't happen again, it'd still be, your 13-year-old would now be 18, you know, and we're missing out on this time. So that's kind of what's opened my eyes up to it as far as being asked to join the committee, being on the committee, and kind of seeing the plans that have all been put together, the enthusiasm for, I'm pointing to them.
Yes, can you come up to the mic?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Did they hear Brian's question?
I think so. They're asking if you can come to the mic.
But I mean, there's really not more to say. I think that's kind of what's opened my eyes as far as the joining the committee, being on the advisory group, and having those concerns early on. Nothing's really changed other than the fact that I see missed potential and loss of time. If we were to go toward an alternative building, an alternative project with the property tax increase, Ben, I'm not really sure how much, and Jay, what the previous plan and property taxes, the mill levy increase, what that would look like and what that cost would be to the city. I mean, those are really important things to discuss. I do agree with both Scott and Brian. I think we need to get our ducks in a row as a council first, and that needs to happen in December, like we have planned with the strategic planning session. But that is a big question that needs answered, because we could sit here and talk back and forth about, obviously more check boxes checked with an alternative building, but if it's not feasible and if it fails again, and we'd have to hit the reset button, and we'd be missing out on, I think, some valuable time. And like I said, maybe the Bauer building would be looking pretty good at that point, for those who do have those concerns. So I'm gonna sit back down.
I just want to make sure that the city council knows that when we presented it 4 years ago, it was a need in the community, and we did our strategic plan 1 year ago, and it's still a need in the community. So we know that it's a need, but I want all you guys to know that we know that right now. So it wasn't just 4 years ago, that it's right now too. So we know that there's a need in the community for our community center.
So I guess moving forward, kind of like I said, the council needs to kind of get their ducks in a row as far as the strategic plan. And then I think that's the question Scott asked are the ones that need to come next. I agree. So what would that look like?
Yeah, I think ideally, if you're going to go to the citizens, and I'll say it again, if you could have an alternative plan, I have no idea if it's feasible, viable, or what it would look like, but it would be, here's what this plan would look like, and here's how it would be funded, and here's this, this current plan. Wouldn't it be great to have 3 choices, this, or nothing? I mean, you've now actually given more choice to the community as opposed to this or nothing.
So I think, Scott, just to clarify on that, I think that'd be 2 separate votes then, or I don't even know how you do that, because you wouldn't be able to vote on a sales tax at that point, because...
Well, it depends on what the funding mechanism is proposed. It might be a joint sales tax and a mill levy on one of the alternatives. It might just be a sales tax on the other. So that's part of the other discussion is, I know the committee's done a lot of work and done some thinking about funding, and have some recommendations that I've heard, but that has to come back into the city again and say, okay, is this how we want to fund this? Does this make sense? Getting with Glenn and Ben and Casey, does this make sense? Does a half-cent make sense? Is there other ways to do it? There's a whole range of opportunities to fund this or pieces of this, and we talked about, I don't know if Julie or Sean brought it up, there might be some other grant money available as well. So the funding piece, I don't know that has even been discussed as what's the best opportunity to go forward, even with this plan. So I guess it gets down to, and this is one of my final questions is, to do an April election or ballot, when does that decision need to be made? So let's back up into dates of decision points to be able to do something in April from a.
January.
Was that 90 days?
90 days.
So,
Need 90 days, yeah.
and is there limits on when we can hold those?
No,
As far as,
just need 90 days.
so it's a moving map, right? It's not, hey, you gotta do it in April or you gotta do it in November. It's 90 days after you publish that you wanna have it.
Correct.
Okay. Didn't know. Thanks. We're just trying to figure out how compressed we need to have the city council conversation. You know, if it was a January decision, we gotta have our ducks in a row and make a decision by then, but it sounds to me like it's just a moving target.
Yeah, the best way to think about it is pick the date you want to have the election on, and at least go 90, the county clerk wants at least 90 days back from there, and just count backward from there.
Can't guarantee that we'll have our ducks in a row in one
No,
shot. I don't think that's what we talked about before.
I know,
when
it's-
visiting it. It's hard to do. I'm
It
sure
is.
it took you guys quite a while to do your strategic plan.
It
takes
is.
like a year for some of them.
It
So,
is.
I'm not
That's my
saying it's going to
concern.
take us a year, but I don't know that we can sit in one meeting with all the things that we need to prioritize and figure that out. But I do feel that we can make good progress. Maybe
Would
we
it be
figure
okay
out-
if I said something?
Yeah.
I just, with great respect for all the ducks that you have and all the rows that you're going to have to look at, I want to also add to the conversation of, we've talked about priorities and strategic planning and also weighing the needs of existing organizations versus building something new. And it's not that this isn't a wonderful plan or something that would be of benefit, but going ahead and making sure that we've really had a solid look at that. And you know where that's coming from, you know, from my perspective. And I'm just putting it out there as another big picture thing to think about. Thanks for letting me get that in.
Any other questions, comments, discussion?
The only other thing that I'd like to say, just so you guys, so we're all on the same page, and I think we can help a little bit with this, but when we looked at this and we proposed it 4 years ago, as a brand new building, it was twice the size with ample parking. It was also twice the cost, I believe, but it was twice the size with ample parking. And it was something that was going to be a recreation center, so it was something that the recreation, you know, alone would have and not to share their building with the city for other programming as well. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that.
That building, as you said, it housed the school district offices. And it was on a location that was land was donated and was in this vicinity here so that the students, we did have an aquatic feature to it. And we also did have a physical, you know, water rehab facet to it. So we felt that even during the school year, there'd be swimming lessons going on or whatever. We had a walking track, a few free weights. We weren't in competition with the business that was currently at that time providing that type of fitness. But yeah, it was able to, you could bring people in to host some competitions.
So it's not comparing apples to apples.
And it was, it's a 5.2. And you understand the most expensive component of that building is the swimming area. And Corey knows where that impetus came from because his grandmother was adamant. She and her aqueducts, you know, when they put the docks, I give it, take 2 more minutes of your time. When we started this, we basically put sheets of paper on the wall down at the rec office and said, come down, write what you want. We didn't write anything. Write what you want. And then if somebody
I guess we're done, guys. Can you hear me? You can hear me now? All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
Yeah,